Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Claim Your Magic podcast with me, Sabrina Scott, where I talk all about how to claim your magic and change your life. So, there's going to be a short and sweet little episode today. I just wanted to get some thoughts out into the universe, and I'll probably end up doing a deeper dive on some of this in a future episode. But I feel compelled to speak on this topic for today for a few different reasons. One of them is if you are in the United States, if you are in the Witchy astrology community online, you probably have already heard about this. I briefly mentioned it in an Instagram story a few days ago, but there was this astrology influencer supposedly who, personally, I had never heard of this person in my life, but apparently some other people had. So whatever, we'll just call her an astrology influencer. She kind of went nuts and was posting all of this apocalyptic shit, apparently, and ended up throwing her children out of a moving vehicle, one of which was an infant who ended up dying, probably fucking obviously. I think the other one was around 8 or 9, and she thankfully survived. Oh, she murdered the baby daddy. I don't know if they were married or whatever, but the father of the infant murdered him, then threw the kids out of the car, and then drove into a tree or something, killing herself basically on the eclipse day, the morning of, apparently because she was afraid of the eclipse. And I didn't do a deep dive into all of the tweets and everything she was saying about it. I don't really feel like I need to do that. These people, unfortunately, are a dime a dozen in the spiritual space. You see a lot of people, and I guess I should probably say my disclaimer first. Obviously, this is a horrible tragedy. Like, I cannot imagine, like, that poor 8 or 9-year-old is just going to have a lot of work ahead of her to heal from this. Absolutely horrifying. Like, just tragic and horrifying. Obviously, this woman needed mental health assistance. Obviously, I think all of that goes without saying. And obviously, the poor gentleman who was murdered, that fucking sucks. Like, horrible, horrible, horrible tragedy. Horrible. So now that disclaimer is out of the way, and it is given sincerely. I don't want to seem callous, but it breaks my heart to see this in my industry, in my community so often. And I don't mean that everyone's out murdering each other every 2 seconds, because obviously that's not true. But you do see a lot of, and increasingly I've seen it in witchy spaces, you do see a lot of people going on this apocalyptic end times conspiracy theory, kind of track. And we've seen it a lot more since COVID, obviously, with the rise of QAnon and all of that bullshit, and the overlap, weirdly, between a lot of that QAnon conspiracy stuff with the, like, super hippy-dippy, like, new age mom section of the internet. Like, somehow that overlapped, which is maybe surprising, maybe not. But we saw a lot of this happening over the pandemic, and I think it hasn't really let up. It's still going on, right? And there's a witchy influencer who I'm not going to name because it doesn't really matter who it is. If you've got the skills to be discerning, you'll be able to discern it no matter who the fuck it is, whether I'm naming them or not. So I think that skill set is more important than me naming names at this point. But if I just wanted to talk about some warning signs around people that are influencers or speakers or people preaching about spirituality. And I hate that I have to even say this, but apparently I do. Apparently a lot of people lack discernment, and I get it. Like, life is scary and stressful, and as you get older, it gets more and more uncertain in a lot of ways. And there are certain populations who, maybe get pulled into this type of stuff easier than others. It's a thing, unfortunately, and it breaks my heart because spirituality is so powerful. Like, authentic, genuine spirituality can be so transformative and amazing and grounding, and I know it got me through all my hard times, to be honest. And I see a lot of people coming to spirituality, especially alternative spirituality, for something different, right? Something that is grounding, something that is stabilizing, something that connects them with their agency and their ability to change shit and have power in their lives. And all of that is why I do what I do. I love helping people connect to their power and their agency, to make their own fucking choices, do what they want to do, seize their dreams, etc., etc. But unfortunately, there is a lot of people in this space, whether it's coming from a cynical kind of place or whether it's coming from mental illness or whether it is coming from, you know, some kind of bizarre mental response to their perceived chaos and uncertainty of the world, and they just need to kind of create these wacky narratives of apocalypse and, you know, conspiracy in order to make themselves feel more in control of an uncontrollable situation. I get it intellectually, but I just wanted to give some warning signs, some things to pay attention to as you are folks probably interested in spirituality in some way. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you at least are interested in astrology or magic or spirituality in some kind of way. And so I'm sure most of you guys already know this already, but I do think it just bears repeating for anyone who needs a reminder, anyone who is new in this space, or anyone who is feeling more vulnerable than usual. I just think it's something I just wanted to share. And this is also inspired from watching literally the most disturbing cult documentary I've ever seen in my life. And it was about someone who I had never heard of before, interestingly. And all of this also happened during COVID. And I don't know how it is I never heard about it, but I'll do an episode about that documentary later because that's a whole other can of worms. But the short version is this loops back to a few podcast episodes I did sometime this year, but around, interestingly, this rise of women in their midlife that seem to have this calling towards new age cult leaderdom. And it's something I've spoken on a little bit because I've noticed it, and it's creepy and it's dangerous. And that's part of why I'm talking about it now, is it is dangerous. Obviously, this astrology woman, danger to her children, danger to herself, danger to her partner, and also dangerous to her audience, whatever she was telling everyone about the impending doom and the end of the world and whatever it was that she was saying. And so I just wanted to share some warning signs or things to notice. And it's a sign that things might be a little bit culty or just unhealthy or just fucked up or just fake. You know, because I don't actually think authentic spirituality is really about the apocalypse. I don't think that authentic spirituality involves being a death cult. Like, I just don't buy that. I don't believe that authentic spirituality is about fear and control. Like, I just feel like that's bullshit. Fear and control is like people stuff. You know, conspiracy theories and apocalypse stuff, like that's all humans trying to control each other and giving into a really dark part of their being. Not to sound like a hippie, but it's very fucked up, and I don't feel the actual spirituality has anything to do with that. So, okay, let's go over a short list here. So if someone is being apocalyptic, talking about end times, the end of the world, great blackouts, you know, this or that, speaking in really absolute kind of broad sweeping terms, like the QAnon people, what do they talk about? Like the Great Awakening or whatever shit they call it. I don't fucking remember. But they talk in these big sweeping phrases about apocalypse, mass crisis, mass death, mass change, mass this, mass that. And I really don't think that that is the vibe, to put it lightly. I think all of that is just people trying to psychologically soothe themselves and have control over the chaotic world that we can never have control over. And it is all a sham. That is my opinion. It's just people trying to control other people by pretending that they have the answers. But and I think, so let me pause here. I do think expertise is important. I do think some people genuinely do have some answers to stuff. At the same time, when they're talking about answers to the apocalypse, and just listen to me and I will tell you about, this and that crazy stuff about the end of the world, that is not the type of expertise that we're talking about. And I know that might sound rich coming from me, since I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in spirits, I believe in magic, I believe in all this stuff, but I do not believe in the apocalypse. I do not believe in apocalyptic stuff. And I don't think it's even a question of belief at this point. It's just a question of science. Like, that is not what's going on at this moment on this planet. It just isn't. And so when you have these people talking about the apocalypse and the end times and fear around these things, they're generating fear. They're positioning themselves as being the one that is getting these prophetic messages. And so this is the second thing to look out for. So the first thing to look out for, apocalyptic narratives. Okay. Second thing to look out for is prophecies. So prophecies irk me, I think, when it comes to this type of stuff. And I do think prophecies tend to be something that you see in cults as opposed to genuine spirituality. What is the difference between, let's say, genuine spirituality around messages? Like, let's say spirits are going to give us messages, and then a prophecy. A prophecy is some random person channeling something, and it's never like their Uncle Bob or, their Aunt Mary or whatever. It's never random ass normal people. It's like Cleopatra, or in this documentary I just watched, Robin Williams. It's like famous people. It's God, it's Jesus, it's this or that. It's like the biggest thing that these messages are coming from. It's like an ascended being, whatever the fuck that means. I think that's not my thing either, if I'm going to be honest. But it's all this grandiose stuff that is so big and extravagant that you can't really argue with it. And so whenever I teach mediumship, I always tell people, your dead Uncle Bob is still dead Uncle Bob. He is seeing things through his own lens. Yes, he's in spirit. Yeah, he might have some perspective that you don't have access to since you're not in spirit. By the end of the day, Bob is still Bob, and maybe he's grown a little bit since he's passed, and if so, then that's great. But at the end of the day, each and every one of us still has the responsibility and the opportunity to make our own decisions about our lives, right? We can choose to ignore dead Uncle Bob. That's a thing that we can do. And that's fine. The world's not going to explode. But with these prophetic people in this cult land and this weird conspiracy land, it's like the message always comes from someone that they don't think you can argue with, or that it's taboo to argue against. And the prophecy is always about generally like all of humanity, or it's about death, or it's about rebirth in like this very literal way. And so you see a lot of these cults have these kind of prophecies about, that's why you see the suicide cults and, oh, they're not dead, they're just ascending. And like you see this crap all over the place. And so that's kind of part of why this prophetic thing, I just feel is something to be incredibly wary of. Like, I would not personally buy into any of that. If I was you, obviously everyone's on their own journey. Do your thing. Ignore me if you want, like, whatever. But I do feel that the way these prophetic groups, cults, etc., the way they work, the whole notion of the way that they set up prophecy is very unhealthy. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It creates dependency. It removes a sense of agency from people in the cult. And it's all about just like following what the current prophecy is today. And it creates a situation where you can't question anything, you can't think for yourself, and it's just like, oh, we've got this prophecy of the end times. That's a situation. And so those are two really big red flags. Obviously, of course, if there's a charismatic leader that is never wrong about anything, that claims to be God, that claims to be Jesus, that claims to be this, that claims to be that, that for me is another red flag. And that's also part of why I can't really buy into any guru or whatever. And obviously I've got issues with authority. I don't really fuck with authority, which I guess is why I'm here telling you guys stuff. But all of these guru people saying that they channel this or that, and that their one guide is like going to give guidance to all of humanity. Like, when we channel stuff for our own self and our own purposes and use that and work with that in our own life in communication with our spirit team, and we know that that messaging is unique to us and it's about our life and our path, and we know that we have sovereignty, and also every other person on this planet has got their own sovereignty and their own path and their own spirit team. And so this is actually why I don't tend to really channel shit for the fucking mass consciousness. Like, will I do a tarot reading for everyone in my tarot for the week ahead? Absolutely. You guys can all decide what to do about that. You know, pay attention, don't pay attention, take what resonates, leave the rest, whatever, it's all good. But I'm very straight up about, like, what is that, right? That's an intuitive process. That is me working with my spirit team to pick up on the vibes, to give a reading for everybody, and that's just what it is. I'm not claiming to channel Jesus or anything like that. And if I was channeling Jesus, personally, I would just keep it to myself and do my own thing, because I don't really believe in imposing that type of thing on other people. I think everyone can. I believe in direct contact. So here's the other thing. So if the group feels that only the leader can contact the spiritual realm, then that is another red flag. And so I'm really big on direct contact. I'm really big on creating a space where I am teaching skills. I ideally would love it if everyone who wants to learn mediumship, everyone who wants to learn tarot, everyone who wants to learn magic, everyone who wants to learn spiritual contact, everyone who wants to learn spiritual skills and energy work, I would love it if everyone who wants to learn that stuff figures out, whether it's through my teachings, other people's teachings, whatever, their own experiments, figures out a way to take that on for themselves. Because I believe that everyone should be empowered if they want to be. You know, and when you've got someone who is positioning themselves as this charismatic leader, and they're the only one that either they are God. In this documentary I just watched, this woman claimed that she was God, which is fucking crazy. But anyway, when you've got a group, a cult, where you've got one person that either is claiming to be God, claiming to be a prophet, or claiming to be the one and only link to the divine, or one and only link to the spirits, that also creates a situation where everyone in that space begins to ignore or become disconnected from their own spirituality and their own intuition. And so all of these things are really important to pay attention to, because I am noticing a lot more apocalyptic narratives, a lot more prophecy, a lot more like I'm the divine chosen one in witchy groups. It's always been on the periphery of new age stuff, unfortunately, but I am noticing that creep more and more into witchy spaces and astrology spaces. And no, I did not do a deep dive on this lady who did the whole murder-suicide thing on the eclipse. I did not do a deep dive into her content. I don't plan to. Again, just because these apocalyptic people tend to be very much running by the same playbook, very much dime a dozen type of stuff. All the same ideas, generally speaking, fear-mongering. Fear-mongering. It's like a lot of all caps. It's very cryptic. It's like it creates fear and paranoia and dependency. And it is not the vibe, to put it lightly. And so just keep your wits about you, my friends. Keep your wits about you. Trust yourself. Trust your gut. And if you are someone who is seeking to have someone just channel everything around you at all times, and you would rather listen to a guru claiming to be Jesus than connecting with your own power, like, I would really take 10 steps back and be like, hey, what is it about my psychology that makes this kind of thing attractive to me? You know, just giving up power to a cult leader or some kind of charismatic guru or whatever who claims to be channeling this or that. Why is that attractive to me? And if that is attractive to you, it's like, okay, maybe that's something to talk to your therapist about, your friends about, get some other opinions about, do some journaling about, maybe even do a tarot reading about, really do some soul searching and be like, okay, why is it that I'm so eager to give over my power and my authority over my own life to some random person that's going to be, you know, spouting this or that or changing their opinion on a whim? And another thing I just want to throw out there is any religion, any group, any cult that is based on destruction and death and encouraging suicide or encouraging all of that, I really don't think is good. So I really think spirituality is actually all about life and being present. And yes, spirituality can help us come to terms with change and transformation and death and change and all of that. It can help us mourn those who have passed. It can help us come to terms with the fact that we're all going to die, which I fucking hate that that's a true thing. But it can help us come to terms with all of that. But ultimately, religion is not about the worship of death. And that is true even for spiritualism, which I grew up in, which is all about mediumship and speaking with the dead. Ultimately, we speak to the dead in order to help us lead better lives. It's not about rushing towards death ourselves, even though it is a spiritual practice that is very much connected with honoring the dead. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, friends, that's enough for me. I've talked enough. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, afternoon, evening, whatever time it is. And I will catch you guys on the flip side. I hope this was useful. I hope this was thought-provoking. I hope you guys all already knew this, but I just wanted to say it again, just because this type of stuff is becoming so much more common in witchy land, and it never was before, and so it's a little bit weird. So that's my warnings. There you go. Pay attention, my friends. And that is all. If you want to say hello to me on the internet, my Instagram is Sabrina M. Scott. My YouTube is youtube.com/Sabrina Scott. Of course, all of my links are at claimyourmagicwithsabrina.com/links. And I probably still have some stuff on sabrinamscott.com because I'm switching my website, so everything's kind of up in the air. And then, of course, my clothing, you can grab that at shopsabrinamscott.com. It is chilly enough here to still be hoodie and sweater and poofy hat season, so if it is the same where you live, feel free to pick something up to keep you warm and cozy while still connecting with your good vibes. Anyway, I hope you learned something today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like the podcast, please share it with a friend. Please give me a 5-star rating and please leave a happy review. It really does mean the world to me. I put a lot of time and energy and effort into sharing this stuff with you. And so if you found this useful or grounding or thought-provoking or whatever, please let me know. Please share. Please spread the word. All of that good stuff, and just subscribe in whatever which way you can if you haven't already. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon. Bye.